Understanding low self-esteem and the causes and the solution for it. So growing up, one thing that I struggled with was low self-esteem. And the reason why is because I had a lot of insecurities. Some of the things that I was insecure about was the fact that I grew up poor. My reading scores were really low. But also, man, I didn't think I was attractive, right? Growing up, man, I had a few girls tell me, oh, you're not attractive, or I don't like you and things like that. And what happened was that I actually brought on that identity. I actually allowed those things to define who I was. But it wasn't until later that I realized the solutions to it. And those solutions, I'm going to go over it in this podcast. Now, here's the thing. When I grew up with that low self-esteem, inside, man, I was depressed. On the outside, what people saw was anger or, let's say, shyness, if you will, right? Depending on who you were, right? Like my family, they'll tell you, man, I grew up an angry kid. But here's the thing, guys. That low self-esteem is not something that you have to continue to struggle with. And by the end of this podcast, you will learn how to overcome it, but also you're going to know why you're feeling so low self-esteem, right? Why you have this low self-esteem. And that's what we're going to go over in this podcast. Now, with that being said, what I would love for you guys to do is actually to subscribe to my newsletter. So all you have to do is click the link in my bio, and then there you'll be able to subscribe to my newsletter. And the reason why is because I email my newsletter weekly with tips that I only share in my therapy sessions, right? And what I do is I go even deeper than these podcasts. So if you really want to overcome things like depression, anxiety, and imposter syndrome, or low self-esteem, that is going to be one of the best ways to do that. And the best thing about it is that it's completely free. So with that being said, let's get into the point number one as to why you're having low self-esteem, and again, the solutions to it. So point number one as to why you're struggling with low self-esteem is because you're allowing your pain, your traumas, your negative thoughts, all these things, you're allowing them to become you. And when you do this, you lose yourself within these things. One thing I tell people in my sessions is that if I were to say to you that I'm a teacher, you probably guess that I teach. If I were to tell someone that I am a runner, you probably guess that I run. But if someone says that they're not good enough, you probably assume that they do not good enough things. Your identity is everything. Something that I love from James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, is he talks about the 3 levels to behavioral change. He talks about on the deeper level, focusing on who you are. Because when you focus on who you are or why you do what you do, the process becomes easy and the outcome is inevitable. That is what we want to focus on. And the thing is that actually hurts you in the opposite way as well. So as I said, if you believe that you're not good enough, if you believe you are your traumas, you're going to do trauma-like things. You're going to do not good enough things. And this is what self-sabotage looks like. This is what not having the marriage that you want looks like, right? This is what these self-fulfilling prophecies that you have about yourself looks like. It's because you believe bad things will happen to you. And as a result, you will craft these things. You will make it so that these bad things do happen to you. So the solution to this is very simple. So if you've ever been to a park, or if you have kids, or like I do, you've seen this happen before, well, where they'll go running and then they'll fall and they'll scrape their knee, right? And when they scrape their knee, what do? You go and you address it, right? You go check on it. And when you do that, you then apply the right Band-Aids, the alcohol, the medicine, all that stuff to that cut. For a lot of people, for you listening right now, you have been cut internally, emotionally, but you've never addressed that wound. And what I want you to do is look at that wound, acknowledge that you have this pain, acknowledge that you have this trauma, acknowledge that you don't, or you, at one point in time, you didn't have the life that you wanted, that you didn't have the relationships that you want, didn't have the parents that you want. I want you to go back to these things and acknowledge that this is a part of your past. This is a part of your history. When you do that, it then allows you to do the most important thing, which is to give yourself compassion for these things. The first step in acceptance is acknowledgement. And that is what you got to do. Once you do that, you'll be able to allow your pain to be your pain. And now you're able to leave you up to you. You're able to love yourself because you see yourself for who you are, not what you've been through. All right, point number 2. I love this one, man. This one was one that really stuck out to me. So if you've ever seen me in person, you would know that I'm a fairly tall person, right? I'm 6'4", right? Now, here's the thing. The average height for the men in the world is about 5'7". And I want to say the average height for men here in America is about 5'9", right? So when I walk outside this house, there's a great chance that I'm taller than most people that I run into. And to be honest, I really didn't notice that I was tall until people started to point it out. But here's the thing about that. If I were to go up to, let's say, a group of NBA players, right, and look around, I would feel really short. And the reason why is because the average height of the NBA player is 6'6". And as you know, there's people way taller than that, right? So as a result, I started to feel small, right? Now, here's the thing. My height didn't change, right? It didn't. The only thing that changed was the environment that I was in. And if I'm not careful, I will allow my environment to dictate whether or not I'm tall or if I'm short. But here's the thing again, my height never changed in that process. And how this relates to your self-esteem is that you allow your environment to determine how much worth you have or how little worth you have. How much confidence, how much self-esteem, self-respect, all these things are dependent on outside circumstances. And these outside circumstances, a lot of them, guys, unfortunately, we can't control. The fortunate thing is that you can control who you are, how you see yourself, right? How you value yourself. And that's what we want to do. That is what this point is all about. Because right now you may allow your successes to determine how much worth you have, or your bank accounts to determine how much worth you had, or your job titles, or all this other stuff. And guys, those things are fleeting, right? Do not be attached to that stuff, especially if you're spiritual. And I think this is a common theme between all spiritualities, religions, and things like that. They would tell you that, hey, the things of this earth is going to stay on this earth. There's something that's going to leave when you leave, right? Like it's going to be your spirit, your soul. So do not be tied to these worldly things because they're not coming with you. I think Denzel Washington said you never see a U-Haul behind a hearse. And the reason why is because you can't take these things with you. So again, in this point, guys, do not compare yourself. That is what this is all about. Your self-esteem, it comes from not being able to see what you bring to the table. It's because you compare yourself to everything that comes across. All right, so point number 3, and here's another thing, guys. I don't say this too often, but point number 3, and this is like a bonus, right? This is a bonus, and then I get to point number 3. So one reason why I see people don't have a lot of self-esteem is because they quit things, right? When you quit things, you have a tough time trusting yourself. Think about when someone you know, let's say it's a good friend, let's say you asked them to go out to dinner and you asked them several times and they say yes, but when it's time to actually go, they tell you, oh, my pinky hurts, I'm sick, I have this thing that I forgot to do. You start to lose faith in them, or more importantly, you start to lose confidence in them. And when that happens, you don't go out and reach out to them anymore because you give up on them. You don't have high confidence in them, right? And as a result, the relationship is fractured. The same thing happens with us internally, and that's why it's important to start things. So I'm so glad that you're here to the end of this podcast because it shows that you are someone that's a finisher and not a dabbler. So with that being said, let's get to the real point number 3. So point number 3 actually comes from something that I learned from my father. So my father, he is a minister, and one day we were sitting in Bible study, I think it was, and he was giving like his Bible study, right? He was giving his sermon and all this stuff. And I remember he gave a story. And what he was, or rather, it wasn't even a story, I would tell you. It was more so like analogy or like a metaphor or what have you. But I remember he said basically, when there's a young tree that's born, right, that comes out of the earth, it's very easy for that tree to bend to the left or to the right, depending on, the wind or let's say the other things around it. So if an animal or a person walks past it, right, like that tree can easily bend. But as that tree gets older, it becomes very harder to bend that tree, right? Like literally outside of my house is a palm tree, right? If I went and tried to push that palm tree, which is the size of my 2-story house, I wouldn't be able to move it, right? I don't even think Arnold Schwarzenegger, the most strongest man in the world, can move that tree. And the reason why is because over the course of time, it has grown its roots, right? It's grown its roots, its core, all that stuff has been solidified. Now, what am I trying to get at here? Well, when it comes to our childhood experiences when we're young, there are some certain things, right? Certain traumas, certain things, certain stories that people have told you that has shaped and molded you into who you are, right? And what we want to make sure we do is we go back and we rewrite those stories, right? Because when you do that, these new beliefs, these new values, it'll then almost correct that tree, right? Like if you ever seen trees, and this is more so along the lines of, I believe it's called horticulture, if I'm not mistaken, like people that does things with plants, like study the science behind them and things like that. If someone were to tie a tree to a stick, over the course of time, that tree would be able to bend back to its natural place, right? I've even seen where trees have been cut in half and then a new tree has been tied to it, right? Like a new branch, and it's been fused together and now it grows in a different path. Like all these things are possible. But what I'm trying to say here is that I need you guys to be willing to go back and rewrite these stories from your childhood, because these stories, if we're not careful, it would develop a limiting belief that we do not have to carry. And what that does is it limits your results. It limits you from the goals and the things that you're able to achieve. So to do that, there's going to be these 2 things that I want you guys to do, and I really want you guys to do them. So the first one, and it kind of ties to point number 2, I want you to imagine you going back to your younger self, having a conversation with them and telling them everything that they need to hear about some of the traumas that they've gone through. What is it that you would say to that younger version of yourself? What was it that you needed to hear when you were 5, 10, 15? What was it that you needed to hear? These are the things that I want you to go back and speak to them about. Now, here's the second one. I want you to imagine a future version of yourself 10 years from now, right? So if you're 40, imagine yourself at 50. They have success. They've accomplished all the things that you want to accomplish at this moment. I want you to imagine that person walking through that door, right? Like literally walking through this door and having a conversation with you about the things that you struggle with today. The reason why I'm having you guys do this is because these things that we're struggling with, we do not have to continue to carry these things with us. And what we're going to do is address younger self, right? And then we're also going to address our current self. And we're doing these from two healthy spaces, right? Because who you were is not who you are, and who you are is not who you're going to be. So what I want you guys to do is have these two conversations with these individuals. And when you do that, you'll be able to increase that self-esteem because you're no longer holding to these childhood traumas that you've been through. So with that being said, I'm gonna do a quick recap of these 3 main points. And I'm so glad you guys are here. I would love for you guys to be more part of my community. And all you have to do is subscribe to my newsletter. Again, that link is in the bio. It's gonna be in the description of this podcast. But also subscribe to this podcast. Again, I give a lot of great gems that I don't give anywhere else. So with that being said, point number 1 was all about not becoming your pain. Your pain and who you are is totally different. Don't let your identity be consumed by things of your past because those things are no longer you. Point number 2, as I said, hey, I'm 6'4", and in some countries, in some spaces, right? So I think the country is like Dutch, right? Like in the Dutch country, that's like where the tallest people are in the world, right? The average height. But what I'm trying to say here in this point number 2 is all about not comparing yourself, because in some cultures, places, spaces, right? Hey, I'm considered very tall. And in other places, I'm considered short. But here's the thing. My height never changed. Only the environment changed. So make sure you're giving value to yourself. And then point number 3 is all about those childhood experiences, those childhood traumas. What I want you guys to do is go back to your younger self, have those conversations, and give them the compassion that they needed at that time. And then also imagine your older version of yourself. So 10 years down the line, who has accomplished all the goals that you want to accomplish. Imagine them coming back to you today and having a conversation with you and asking yourself, what would they say to me about the struggles, about the low self-esteem I have at this moment? What would they say? All right, with that being said, my name is Coach Wells. I'm a licensed therapist. And man, you are so awesome for making it to the end. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.